Guten Tag, metalheads. When you think of Germany, what comes to mind? Beer? High-performance cars? Maybe Oktoberfest? Well, prepare to have your minds blown, because Germany is, without a doubt, one of the most brutal and influential birthplaces of heavy metal on the planet. This is a country that gave us some of the most legendary thrash destroyers, power metal gods, and industrial metal pioneers to ever grace a stage. Today, we're diving deep into the German metal underground and counting down 15 bands that didn't just make music. They forged the very soul of heavy metal itself. So grab your favorite German beer, crank up those speakers, and let's embark on this epic journey through the land of riffs, screams, and pure metallic mayhem. Scorpions. We kick off in 1965 with the absolute legends, Scorpions. Born in the industrial city of Hanover, these guys didn't just write songs. They crafted anthems that shook the world. Picture this. It's 1990. The Berlin Wall is falling, and Scorpions' Wind of Change becomes the soundtrack of freedom, selling over 14 million copies worldwide. But don't let the ballad fool you. Long before they were rock diplomats, Scorpions were metal warriors. Their 1984 album Love at First Sting went double platinum in the US, with Rock You Like a Hurricane blasting from every rock station. Fun fact, that iconic riff was born when Rudolf Schenker was just jamming in his garage, proving that German precision can rock your soul. And when Klaus Meine's soaring vocals cut through those crushing riffs, that's not just music. It's heavy metal engineering at its finest. But here's the untold story. Scorpions weren't just a band. They were a weapon of cultural soft power during the Cold War. Their albums, especially Love at First Sting, were contraband treasures in the Eastern Bloc, a forbidden taste of Western freedom and excess. When Scorpions finally played in the USSR in 1988, it wasn't just a concert. It was a seismic cultural event that helped weaken the Iron Curtain from within. They weren't just observers of history. They were catalysts, turning riffs and melodies into a force that shook politics as much as it shook stadiums. Except, from the steel city of Solingen comes a band that sounded just like their hometown. Sharp, precise, and absolutely devastating. Except didn't just play heavy metal, they turned it into a weaponized sonic assault. Udo Dirkschneider's voice? Imagine a buzzsaw crossed with a panzer tank, roaring through the battlefield. And Wolf Hoffmann's riffs, razor sharp, cutting like steel, gave the world a new definition of Teutonic metal. Their 1983 album Balls to the Wall was a breakthrough, going gold in the US, an achievement almost unheard of for a European metal band at the time. The title track was so provocative, MTV even banned the video at first. But that only fueled its power as an anthem of rebellion. Accept didn't just pioneer German metal. They forged its very foundation with steel and fire. But here's the overlooked legacy. Wolf Hoffmann's highly melodic, harmonized, and incredibly precise guitar work on albums like Balls to the Wall and Metal Heart was the direct precursor to the Gothenburg sound of bands like At the Gates and In Flames. Accept proved that extreme, snarling vocals could be paired with soaring, anthemic riffs without losing an ounce of aggression. In many ways, the entire genre of melodic death metal owes a massive, often unacknowledged debt to Accept's unique balance of brutality and melody. Running Wild. Ahoy there, mateys! Ever wondered what happens when German precision meets high seas adventure? You get Running Wild, the pirate metal pioneers. Formed in Hamburg in 1976, Rock'n'Rolf Kasparek and his crew didn't just play heavy metal. They turned it into a treasure hunting saga, while other bands were busy singing about love, heartbreak, or metal itself. Running Wild were spinning tales of naval battles, buried treasure, and legends of the seven seas. Their 1987 album Under Jolly Roger didn't just invent a subgenre. It became a landmark release that launched 1,000 pirate ships in metal, inspiring bands like Ailstorm and the Dreadnoughts. Fun fact, Rolf wrote much of the record while obsessing over pirate history, sketching stories of Blackbeard as he riffed away in his bedroom. With galloping rhythms, epic storytelling, and a swashbuckling spirit. Running Wild proved that heavy metal could be as adventurous as it is heavy. At a time when metal was dominated by songs about fighting for metal, street-tough masculinity, or cartoonish satanic imagery, Running Wild's pirate theme was nothing short of radical. It wasn't just a gimmick, it was escapism as rebellion. By embracing high seas fantasy, they explored deeper themes of freedom, rebellion against authority, think the British Navy versus the record industry, and carving your own path against the tide. In doing so, Running Wild cleverly sidestepped the cliches of their peers and created a mythology that was both subversive and timeless. Gravedigger. From the depths of German metal history rises Gravedigger, and they're every bit as fierce as their name suggests. Formed in Gladbeck in 1980, these warriors have been crafting power metal that feels like battle hymns for the modern age. Chris Boltendall's gravelly voice doesn't just sing, it commands armies, while riffs slam like a battering ram. Their 1996 concept album, Tunes of War, wasn't just a record, it was an epic saga, a sonic journey through the history of Scotland. Tracks like The Dark of the Sun drew inspiration from historic clashes like the Battle of Bannockburn. And here's a fun fact. To promote the album, Gravedigger even performed in a Scottish castle, with bagpipes echoing through stone halls. That's power metal at its most authentic. History class fused with pure metal fury. Gravedigger doesn't just recount history, they mythologize it. Whether it's Tunes of War, Scottish history, or Rheingold, Germanic mythology, they distill complex events into larger-than-life battles of good versus evil, freedom versus oppression, perfectly suited to the power metal format. In doing so, they transform dusty historical detail into emotionally charged storytelling that resonates deeper than any textbook, turning history into legend and legend into metal. Sodom. Warning, we're entering dangerous territory. From the industrial wastelands of Gelsenkirchen comes Sodom, a band so raw, so brutal, and so absolutely relentless, they helped birth extreme metal itself. Formed in 1981, frontman Tom Angel Ripper Such didn't just sing about war. He declared musical warfare on everything soft and commercial. His raw, apocalyptic vocals over bone-crushing riffs turned thrash into something darker and more savage. When their landmark album Agent Orange dropped in 1989, it hit like a nuclear explosion, selling over 100,000 copies in Germany alone. Tom, a working-class son of Gelsenkirchen, used Sodom as a weapon to document war from the ground level. Unlike bands that glorified battlefield chaos, Sodom's lyrics, especially on Agent Orange and Persecution Mania, focused on the mud, blood, and trauma of the ordinary soldier and civilian. This wasn't the grand strategy of generals, but the raw horror of survival. Fueled by Angel Ripper's fascination with military history, Sodom's music became both brutal and thought-provoking. A protest against war itself, forged in the furnace of a blue-collar reality that knew exactly what conflict costs. This is Teutonic thrash at its most explosive and uncompromising, a sonic battlefield that paved the way for death and black metal legions to come. Destruction. Destruction. By name and by nature. From Vilem Rhine, this band unleashed a thrash metal hurricane that could rival the American Big Four note for crushing note. Formed in 1982, they quickly became one of the unshakable pillars of Teutonic thrash. Marcel Schmier Schirmer's vocals, like a machine gun spitting pure aggression, fired over razor-sharp riffs with the precision of German engineering. Their 1985 debut, Infernal Overkill, became nothing less than a blueprint for thrash metal. Lightning fast, chaotic, and absolutely ferocious. But here's the secret weapon. Destruction thrived on pure DIY ethos. Those early albums weren't polished in big studios with major label money. They were cut raw, fast, and on shoestring budgets. Infernal Overkill was hammered out in just 10 days, and instead of being a weakness, that rough, almost amateur edge gave the music a sense of urgency and authenticity that defined the underground. It wasn't just thrash, it was rebellion, proof you didn't need corporate backing to create something legendary. Fast, furious, and unrelenting, destruction is thrash at its most devastating, raw steel forged in the fires of the underground. Kreator. All hail the kings of German thrash. Kreator. Formed in Essen in 1982, Mil Petroza didn't just write songs. He forged weapons of mass destruction, unleashing pure sonic annihilation on the world. Their 1986 masterpiece, Pleasure to Kill, isn't just an album title, it's a promise. A relentless assault of speed and brutality that became one of the most influential thrash records ever. Fun fact, its raw, chaotic intensity was so extreme it directly inspired early death metal pioneers like Death and Morbid Angel. But Kreator's story doesn't stop at violence, it evolves. What began as primal depictions of carnage on Pleasure to Kill grew into sharp socio-political critiques on Coma of Souls. And by the time of modern epics like Gods of Violence and Hate Über Alles, Mil Petroza was no longer just a thrash warrior. He was a philosopher with a guitar, dissecting the root causes of humanity's bloodlust. Ideology, religion, nationalism. Through 4 decades and over 2 million albums sold, Kreator never lost their ferocity. Instead, they transformed brutality into insight, proving that thrash can be both devastatingly heavy and intellectually profound. Kreator aren't just thrash titans, they are the evolution of thrash itself. Tankard. Time to party. While other thrash bands were getting darker and more serious, Tankard said, "Hold my beer." Literally. Formed in Frankfurt in 1982, these legends invented alcoholic metal and turned heavy music into the ultimate celebration. Frontman Andreas Jeremiah's vocals? Like your drunk best friend belting out metal anthems, but with real power and skill. Their 1988 album, The Morning After, is a love letter to beer-fueled chaos, packed with thrashy riffs and infectious energy. Fun fact, Tankard even teamed up with a German brewery to create their own beer, Tankard Ale, because of course they did. As the fun-loving 4th member of the Teutonic thrash Big Four, Tankard has spent over 40 years proving metal can be fast, heavy, hilarious, and absolutely infectious. Beneath the booze and party antics, Tankard's obsession with alcohol is also a sharp satire of the metal subculture itself. Their songs parody the over-the-top, party-hardy lifestyle so prevalent in the 80s metal scene. By taking it to absurd extremes, like producing their own beer, they hold up a funhouse mirror to their peers. They are not just participants in the scene, they are its metal satirists, critiquing and celebrating the culture simultaneously. Helloween. Prepare for magic. From Hamburg in 1984 came Helloween, the band that quite literally invented power metal as we know it today. When Kai Hansen and the crew unleashed the Keeper of the Seven Keys saga in 1987 to 88, they didn't just make albums, they created a mythology. Michael Kiska's operatic voice soaring over twin guitar harmonies turned songs like I Want Out into anthems of freedom. Pure euphoria translated into sound waves. The Keeper albums are widely credited with defining European power metal, taking the speed of thrash, adding the heart of classic metal, and inspiring a generation of bands from Stratovarius to Dragon Force. The Keeper saga arrived during the late 80s, a period of Cold War anxiety. Helloween's music offered a crucial form of escapism. Their songs weren't just fantasy, they were about transcendence. I Want Out, hope, future world, and personal power, eagle fly free. In a world overshadowed by nuclear fears, Helloween provided a sonic escape hatch, using soaring melodies and epic storytelling as a direct antidote to global pessimism. And their story didn't end in the 80s. Helloween's 2021 self-titled album debuted at #1 in Germany, proving that this pumpkin-fueled legacy is still unstoppable.
Pushing me from black to white, they're pushing till there's nothing more to...
Blind Guardian. From the realm of Krefeld comes a band that turned fantasy into metal, Blind Guardian. Formed in 1984, these masters didn't just read Tolkien. They transformed Middle-earth into a sonic battlefield filled with choirs, riffs, and pure imagination. Hansi Kirsch's voice is like a warrior bard, an angel of war singing epic tales that soar straight out of a fantasy novel. Their 1998 masterpiece, Nightfall in Middle-earth, based on Tolkien's The Silmarillion, wasn't just an album. It was a full-blown concept saga, blending symphonic power with thrash intensity. Fun fact, the band spent months studying Tolkien's lore to craft its 22 tracks, including story-driven interludes that made the experience truly immersive. Blind Guardian doesn't just narrate stories, they replicate the experience of literature. Layered vocals, intricate song structures, and orchestral arrangements act as a musical analog to dense prose, deconstructing myths and reconstructing them as sonic epics. Hansi Kirsch functions less as a frontman and more as a storyteller, using every musical tool to make the listener feel the narrative, not just hear it. Symphonic, powerful, and absolutely magical. This is what happens when German precision collides with boundless imagination. Rage meet the Trailblazers. Formed in Herne in 1984, Rage didn't just follow trends, they set them. Led by the unstoppable P.V. Wagner, this band was pushing boundaries when others were still figuring out the rules. Their 1996 album Lingua Mortis was nothing short of a revolution, blending heavy metal with a full symphony orchestra on every track, years before symphonic metal became a global trend. Fun fact, they recorded it in Prague with the Lingua Mortis Orchestra inside a historic theater, giving the album its epic, larger-than-life sound. With the Lingua Mortis project, Rage didn't just create a symphonic album. They built one of metal's first true transmedia experiences. Music was combined with a comic book telling the story, blending auditory and visual storytelling long before it became common. P.V. Wagner wasn't just writing songs, he was crafting a universe across multiple platforms, a concept that bands like Coheed and Cambria or Ayreon would later perfect. With more than 25 studio albums and over 4 decades of relentless creativity, Rage proves that innovation and longevity go hand in hand. German metal at its boldest and most inventive. Gamma Ray. When Kai Hansen left Helloween, fans feared the power metal flame might fade. But in 1989, he came roaring back with Gamma Ray, and the fire only burned brighter. Hansen proved he wasn't just a guitarist, but a one-man army, recording both guitars and vocals on their debut album. Their 1995 masterpiece, Land of the Free, isn't just an album. It's a power metal manifesto, a bible of anthems that still unite festivals across the globe. Hansen's passionate vocals and masterful riffs forged songs that became rallying cries for freedom and strength. The success of Gamma Ray also highlights the unique contribution of Michael Weikath, Helloween's other guitarist and songwriter. While Hansen is rightly hailed as a genius, Gamma Ray's anthemic, straightforward, and triumphant sound clarifies his specific writing voice, contrasting with Weikath's more complex, nuanced, and progressive style, heard on Helloween classics like Eagle Fly Free and March of Time. In other words, Gamma Ray allows fans to deconstruct Helloween's classic sound and appreciate the two distinct creative forces that made it legendary. With over 3 decades of relentless touring and more than a dozen studio albums, Gamma Ray stands as German power metal at its most glorious. No compromise, no weakness, just pure metallic power. Edguy, from teenage prodigies to power metal royalty. In 1995, an 18-year-old Tobias Sammet formed Edguy in Fulda, Germany, and his vision was already larger than life. With albums like Theater of Salvation, 1999, Edguy brought theatrical flair, catchy hooks, and sheer joy to power metal, turning every release into a spectacular show. Fun fact, Sammet wrote much of Theater of Salvation while still in high school, dreaming of epic stages before he ever set foot on one. That youthful energy laid the groundwork for his later legendary Avantasia project, featuring some of rock and metal's biggest names. But Edguy remains his original masterpiece, a shining testament to German metal's boundless creativity. Edguy's career, especially in the late 90s and early 2000s, demonstrates brilliant, self-aware career management. As power metal became more serious and symphonic, Edguy zigged, embracing hard rock swagger, humor, and theatricality. Hellfire Club, Rocket Ride. This wasn't just an artistic choice, it was strategic, carving out a unique market position. They captured fans who found other power metal too pretentious, while still satisfying purists with serious musicianship. Tobias Sammet revealed himself not just as a songwriter, but as a shrewd cultural strategist. Edguy proves that power metal can be fun, theatrical, and genius all at once. Rammstein. Achtung. From reunified Berlin in 1994 comes Rammstein, the band that turned German metal into a global phenomenon. They don't just make music, they create full-on sensory overload that assaults every sense. Till Lindemann's deep, commanding vocals and provocative lyrics ride over walls of industrial mayhem, while their apocalyptic live shows redefine what a concert can be. Spectacles of fire, explosions, and pure German power. Their 1997 smash Du Hast wasn't just a hit. It became the first German-language song to chart on the Billboard Hot 100, cementing their place in history. Fun fact, their stage productions cost millions to create, making Rammstein not just a band, but the most explosive live act in metal history. Rammstein's genius lies in their ability to reclaim and recontextualize German iconography, once toxified by 20th century history. They use the aesthetics of totalitarianism, military precision, and industrial might, not to glorify, but to examine the dark, seductive, and dangerous sides of power, authority, and national identity. They force a global audience to engage with German history and symbolism on their own terms, transforming it into complex, provocative, and ultimately critical art. With music that's as intellectually daring as it is sonically punishing, Rammstein proves German metal can provoke, mesmerize, and dominate all at once. Powerwolf. Finally, we arrive at the modern masters, Powerwolf. Formed in Saarbrücken in 2003, these gothic metal titans proved that German metal was far from finished. With vampire lore, werewolf legends, and gothic imagery that would make Dracula jealous, they transformed metal into a full-blown theatrical spectacle. Attila Dorn's operatic voice soaring above massive choirs turns every track into an unholy mass, with sing-along anthems that unite thousands. Albums like The Sacrament of Sin, 2018, and Call of the Wild, 2021. Both hit #1 in Germany, cementing Powerwolf's place as a global force. Fun fact, their lyrics draw heavily from Transylvanian folklore, and they've even performed at medieval festivals to embrace their dark, gothic roots. These songs don't just play, they possess your very soul. Powerwolf thrives on what they call a theology of the absurd. They take Catholic iconography, the most solemn and ritualistic of Western traditions, and fuse it with the most outrageous horror cliches, from werewolves to vampires. This creates an over-the-top, blasphemous yet reverent world where the communion wafer is as powerful as a silver bullet, and the cathedral houses both saints and sinners. They aren't attacking faith, they are expanding its mythology, making Gothic metal a space where the monstrous and the sacred coexist in spectacular fashion. With their mix of theatricality, folklore, and sheer musical power, Powerwolf proves that German metal continues to evolve, enthrall, and dominate audiences worldwide. From the pioneering thunder of Scorpions in 1965 to the modern majesty of Powerwolf in the 2000s, German bands haven't just participated in metal history. They've written it in blood, sweat, and pure sonic power. Whether you crave the thrashing brutality of the Big Three, the soaring majesty of power metal gods, or the industrial chaos of Rammstein, Germany's metal scene offers everything your metallic heart desires. So tell me, fellow warriors of the riff, which of these German legends sets your soul on fire? Did we miss any underground heroes that deserve recognition? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Smash that like button if this journey through German metal rocked your world. And don't forget to subscribe for more epic metal history. Until next time, keep the metal alive, and remember, in Germany, they don't just make music, they forge metal legends.